Hi, I'm back. I had to take a break for a minute because 7 minutes talking to a computer screen was just driving me crazy. Where were we? We're talking about intergovernmental aid, and I think I was finished with that. I gave you a couple of heartfelt examples. Thing you should know, though, is the COVID-19 crisis is a big, massive intergovernmental aid bill going on passed this past week. Billions for the states and territories. Hope it all works. We can talk about it next year. You won't be talking about it next year. I'll be talking about it with my class next year, hopefully in person. No offense. What we're going to talk about now, though, is something else. We're going to talk about user fees. User fees and charges. And first thing you should know is they are among the most efficient ways to raise revenue. With hands down, right? If you took a poll of public finance experts and smart folks and economists, they'd say, well, user fees are perfect when you can use them. There are limits. We'll talk about what some of those limits are. Because you can match up demand for a public service and with those who are willing to pay for it. And if you did it right, there's no pure user fees. The people who are using it would pay for 100% of the cost of providing it. That would be perfect. It never quite works that way. I'll give you an example. The largest single user fee for state governments is, you're supposed to be guessing, it is higher education, public university tuition, right? So the government's providing you a service, schooling, and you're paying a user fee, tuition, right? But no school, no state lets that happen 100%. Tuition doesn't fund it, right? Because it defeats the purpose of having a state university system. The tuition user fee only covers some percentage of the cost of providing the service, right? And that's true with everything we impose user fees on. The user fees vary widely across the states, across local governments. As I said, the largest one is for college tuition, but governments run hospitals and charge fees for them. They charge fees for parks. Federal government does that as well. The local governments, the federal government, the state, I'm losing my train of thought here. The state governments also run toll roads, user fee, mileage taxes, user fee, very efficient. Local governments have parks that they charge fees for, but more importantly, utilities and like sewage and things like that are user fees. They also run a lot of parking garages, local governments. Those are user fees. And there's several drawbacks. First, user fees are limited because you have to be able to limit access. You can't have a user fee unless you're limiting access, right? So you can't have a user fee for national defense because you can't limit access to national defense. So there's lots of things that we don't want to limit access to: police protection, fire protection, that kind of good stuff. General health and welfare, broad-based, you don't want to really limit access to that. So that's number one. Number two, there's certainly limits on how much money you can raise. One, user fee revenue can only go up if you raise the fee or if more people use the service. But as I said, the costs are theoretically supposed to match. The fees are supposed to theoretically match the cost of providing the service. So you can't run up the cost. You can't run up the charge if there's not a commensurate service provision increase. that should all make perfect sense to you. There's also actually some significant market limitations. If you charge too much, people will stop using the public service and find an alternative. I'll give you two examples. Pick a good public university, University of Virginia. Some of you may have gone. University of Virginia is an excellent school, relatively cheap because it's in-state. But if the university and the state decide to jack up the tuition significantly and you got into Duke, well, maybe you'd go to Duke. There's no savings than going to UVA. So there's some market conditions, market limitations. Parks, for instance, right? So my favorite park, if you get a chance after the coronavirus thing is over, is down in southern Maryland, Calvert Cliff State Park. Go someday. It's a great state park. Costs $5 per car to go in. It's well worth it. However, if the state decided to charge $50 to get in, maybe I'd find something else to do with my $50 and not go to the park. So that's the market limitation. You guys get that. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is we've slapped user fees and charges on just about anything that'll move. So there's not a lot of growth there. But they're certainly an important component of the state and local fiscal arena. All right, let's talk about licensing fees. And there's not a lot to say about them, although they raise a lot of money, surprising amount of money, about $58 billion at the state level. And these include professional licenses for doctors and lawyers and accountants. It also includes business licenses of all kinds. At the local level, it's almost all business licenses, right? So if you operate in the town of Vienna, you need some kind of business license. And really, they also include, by the way, hunting and fishing licenses, right? So if you want to hunt or fish, you got to get a license in every state. And they're supposed to pay for the regulation and oversight of what is being licensed. That's the way it's supposed to work, and it generally does. I don't know if it matches up exactly. So in a sense, it's like a user fee. So restaurants pay money. Well, I'll give you a better example. My mother ran a beauty shop in Scranton, Pennsylvania for 40 years. And she paid a license fee, every year to the state. And what the state did was they hired inspectors to come and look at her shop, right? Regular shop, right? So that was all tied together. And I think you see that with most licensing fees. You certainly see it with hunting and fishing. The game wardens, whatever they call them in your state, are paid for through the hunting and fishing licenses usually, or at least partly. Again, the licensing fees probably don't cover it all, but maybe they do. Okay, there's not a lot to say about licensing fees. There's just not. Okay, more interesting. Much more interesting is gambling. More interesting to me. I love to gamble. And states, states, not local governments, but states, states raise money from gambling, increasing about $40 billion. So it's not like a huge amount. States thought it would be huger this year when many states legalized sports gambling, but there hasn't been a lot of sports to bet on this year, right? The single biggest things you can bet on, the Super Bowl that passed, and people bet on that. But the second biggest thing they bet on is the NCAA tournament, and that's canceled. And so nobody's betting on the NBA or anything else. So the states are actually losing a lot of money on that. Gambling took off because, well, gambling's not taxes. Of course, there's an old saying that gambling is a tax on people who are bad at math, and that is true. I'll tell you some stories in that. Every state except Hawaii and Utah has some form of gambling. States have lotteries, they have casinos, horse racing. Some states still have dog racing, but casinos and lotteries are the big ticket items. A couple of things. I love to gamble. There's nothing more exhilarating than having $500 on an NFL game when you only have $200 in the bank. And I unfortunately know a lot about it. Too much, really. So here's a little myth for you, a little fun fact. Bookies do not break people's legs. I know that. What good would that do? You can't go to work and pay them back. But the real penalty for failing to pay is they cut you off from gambling, and there's nothing more painful to a gambler than being cut off from gambling. The libertarian in me does not care what you do with your money. It's, after all, your money. Spend it, save it, gamble it, snort it up your nose. I don't care. I do care, but I hate gambling as a source of revenue. And I'll tell you 3 reasons why. A little background. I really do, and I've testified on this, and I've written a lot about it. And for a person who loves to gamble, it may seem odd, but I really think it's an awful way to raise money for public services. One, gambling is addictive. There's been studies that show it's as addictive as cocaine or heroin. So addiction is bad, right? So you're gonna raise revenue based on something that is addictive. So just think about that for a minute. Second, gambling is regressive. The poorer you are, the greater amount of money you spend on gambling. Rich people don't gamble so much because their numbers already come in. Remember that. And again, there's a ton of research on this. It's regressive. Poor people gamble more than rich people. And there's some exceptions to that, right? So you see a James Bond movie where the rich guys are playing Baccarat or something. That's not real gambling. But you can go look. You can find stuff on this. And 3, and this is weird because it's not really my thing, but gambling is morally offensive to many people. So that I don't judge tax policy on morality, religion, and stuff, but it should bother you that it bothers a lot of people. A lot of people actually think it's sinful, the idea that you can not work and magically get money. I'll tell you one little anecdote. So something that I was involved in many years ago. Maryland has lots of casinos now, but they used to have no casinos, and people wanted to get casinos and legalize more gambling. And you know who fought them? It was African American churches in Baltimore and Prince George's County. Led the fight against the casinos and legalization of the casinos. So why would they do that? They did it because gambling is addictive and it's regressive, and it would hurt their congregants, right? Poor people, addicting poor people to pay. Come on. And that worked. They held it off for about 7 or 8 years and couldn't hold it off anymore. Okay, I ended up having to make 2 tapes because when I took my break before, I paused it and I couldn't get it back. So there's going to be 2 tapes coming. Watch them. Well, now I'm telling you at the end of tape 2 to watch them. So I'm leaving you out of class early today. Be careful and be safe. Write me if you have any questions. Email me, pernori@gwu.edu. You can call me. Better if you email me. We can set up a phone call time if you really want to. But if you want to talk about anything, career stuff, whatever, write me. Better yet, get me on that Twitter thing, the Twitter, and or LinkedIn. That's what you should do. We'll see how many of you sign up. All right, goodbye.